Hi, common viewers. Welcome to Strictly for You. I think it was Sir Professor Richard Feynman um, in a specific clip. He's talking about a dialogue between him and his father, and then he said his father said something to him. He's like, you see this owl. Um, you can learn its different names in different languages, but what you get to learn at the very end is that you just know the name of that creature in different languages. You don't know the animal itself. But once you give yourself time to sit there and observe that animal, um, while it's just busy there in showing all its characteristics, its attributes, you get a chance to know the animal itself. This is something that happens when we are actually even interacting with concepts. What we often do is that we mistaken maybe the social understanding that we derive from the context within which we heard the words. We actually always confuse what a thing means with what we heard it in, with what we had the context within which it was applied. So this is what I'm trying to get to. There's a concept in this book on there's this myth. There's a concept called sin, and if what people often do is they try to tell you what sin is in different languages. Some will tell you, oh, this is the name in Hebrew, or this is the name in Greek. But what you often find out after listening to them deeply is that they don't know what it means. They just know it in the many languages. But what it points to, they don't know. But when you give yourself time to observe and learn, and don't learn with the assumption that you already know, learn with that approach of a child who's just curious to get to know, because that's usually how children are. They explore with things, and at the end, they actually know more than adults usually. So the whole idea of sin, the first time you actually come across it in this um, biblical biblical literature, the first time you come across it is in this play between Adam, Eve, and a snake, right? I had to do it that way. So when you observe that story, Adam is told something. Listen, Adam, don't eat of the fruit of this particular tree, because once you eat of the fruit of this particular tree, you will die. And well, you know how the story goes. But then what I want to draw attention to is what sin is. It says you will die. What is death? Is separation from source, separation from life, right? And it said that Adam sinned. And it said when Jesus comes, is like, this is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, not the sins, but the sin of the world. So now, what does the word sin mean? What does it point to? I'm not asking what is the name in Hebrew, what is the name in Greek, as is the culture, but what does the word sin denotes? If I let me just proceed proceed to some books further. There's a talk on this person called Jesus. He's talking to his audience right there. He says, if a man divorces his wife, he separates from her, he causes her to sin. See, not sins, he causes her to sin. Just listen to that short expression there. If a man divorces his wife, he causes her to sin. So what is divorce? It's separation. Here's a story which is commonly called the story of the prodigal son, which is not a story about the prodigal son. It's actually a story about the father. The prodigal son says to his father, hey, give me my inheritance, man. I want to be independent from you. I want to live my own life, be my own man, and all that stuff. And then, well, the son is given the inheritance, and then he goes, and then he goes and wastes his inheritance in riotous living, and suddenly he's poor, and all that is suffering, and suddenly he comes to himself and says, I'll go back to my father and say, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I mean, obviously, if you're sinning against heaven, you're sinning against the one who sits on it. So, Father, I've sinned against you and against heaven. He says he'll go to his father and say that. Did he sin? What was his sin? He's asked for separation from his father. So separation from source, that's what sin means. And what is called sins, you see, everybody's inclined to think sin and sins, we are dealing with singularity and plurality. But this is a whole different thing that we are dealing with. When it says sins, in the mind of a mystic, it would be known that, sins is what gets birthed out of the separation. Anything that gets birthed out of the separation is called sins. This is why Paul would actually say in the book of Romans, whatsoever is not of faith is sin, because if it is born out of that separation, well, that's what sins are. But sin is the act of separation. So the Lamb of God, which takes away the sin of the world, takes away the separation between God and men. Now, it does not mean a separation in a way that, the other person stays over there, the other one is there. It's separation in the sense of the power is suspended. And now when the power is suspended, there's this act of duality at play. You no longer know yourself as being one with your source. You start thinking of there's a source over there and there's you over there. So what Jesus gets rid of is the separation and brings you back to oneness. Now, you are no longer the wicked. You're no longer all that stuff. So your thoughts are God's thoughts. Thank you. I know it was longer than usual. I hope with those lungs of gold, you still breathe wealth.